Alright, hello. Welcome to this video about climate change, and I'm going to explain to you the effects Long Island is going to face from climate change and where Long Island's vulnerabilities are. We're just going to be focusing mainly on Long Island in this video. But anyway, let's first start with what's happening to the jet stream. Alright, so I'm going to draw the jet stream in purple here, and we're going to take a look and see what's happening to the jet stream. So, first, actually before I even draw the jet stream, I'm going to explain to you why the weather is screwed up the way it is. Alright? So up north here, we're seeing temperatures rising in the Arctic very rapidly at a much higher rate. So it's getting rising temperatures over here, right? Due to climate change, alright? Ice is melting. It's warming faster than anywhere else in the globe right now is the Arctic up here. So it's rising up here, alright? So what's causing this jet stream problems is that the tropics, which are over here, the difference between these two places here, the difference between the tropics and the poles are what fuels the jet stream. So because the temperatures are rising here, the jet streams are getting wavier. And we have a lot of mountains here on the west coast, so I'll just draw the mountains here. We know we have a lot of mountains here on the west coast. Probably not a good job here, but we have a lot of mountains here. So what these mountains do is they protect the west from the humidity that comes off the tropics here, pretty much. All right, the humidity can't get into this area over here. It's very difficult for the humidity to get in here. Usually it'll come in, it'll just drain itself out. All right. So we go back to the jet stream here, and the jet stream has a tendency, whatever is left of the jet stream has a tendency when it hits this to dip. So we're seeing more dips in the west, more troughs in the west. Alright, so we're seeing wavier jet streams, and so you have this wavy jet stream like this. Alright? That's what's happening to the jet stream. So the jet stream is getting wavy, it's getting diffuse, and it's favoring drier conditions in the west, or sometimes drier conditions in the west, and cooler, drier conditions in the west. That's what we've been undergoing now. All right. So this is the jet stream, or what's left of it. All right. Remember, normally the jet stream, we'll draw the normal jet stream. So normally the jet stream would be in a west to east pattern, more like this. That would be the normal jet stream, but that's not what's happening. Instead, we're seeing this, we'll just have to erase that. We're seeing this, this wavy, diffuse jet stream that's over us right now, right? And it's causing the East Coast to get tropical. And because of the way the jet stream is, we are getting all the tropical air coming up. So all the air that normally would be confined to these areas here in the tropics is all coming up the East Coast. So it's all coming up the East Coast and way up the East Coast. Even if you go north into Maine, you're not safe. Even parts of eastern Canada aren't safe. We're seeing all this tropical moisture coming up, and that's why you have all the humidity. That's why it's getting much more humid and much more cloudier because of this. Alright, see more humidity, and the bad thing is if you have any kind of tropical cyclone here, this pattern brings it right up the East Coast. So this puts us in the, not only for humidity, not only for tropical storms and hurricanes, for extreme rainfall events, it also puts us in a pattern for severe weather as well. So there's going to be a lot of effects, and there's going to be a lot of risks to living on the East Coast, between heavy downpour rainfall events, extreme humidity and heat, and tropical storms. So now let's take a closer look at Long Island and see how this is going to affect Long Island and what risks lie where. Alright, so we're looking at Long Island here, and we're going to draw where the risks are for different types of severe weather events that we're going to be dealing with due to climate change. Again, we're just focusing on Long Island, not New York City. We're just going to be focusing on this area that's to the left of the black line, to the right of the black line, I should say. So just just this area here. So any area to the right of the black line we're going to be focusing on, not the city. The city is going to have a lot of problems too, but I have to focus on Long Island. So the first and foremost, obviously, is the hurricanes, the tropical systems. They're going to cause more flooding, and areas that are susceptible to low flooding are low-lying areas that are mainly on the South Shore. Now, we've seen storm surge maps, and we know that anything that's pretty much in the vicinity of Sunrise Highway and south is going to get flooded. So this whole area right here, you can draw this all the way out, whole South Shore, right? Whole South Shore. However, the elevation does rise a little bit in West Hampton, towards Suffolk, so there's a little more increase in elevation. So, and Sunrise Highway is a little further north, so the line is going to be a little more toward Montauk Highway as we head into eastern Suffolk, and then parts of the East End, parts of the Hampton Bays, and then the elevations come down again once you go into Southampton, Watermill. These are low-lying areas here, East Hampton as well, Napiog. In fact, most of Napiog will be underwater probably. Unfortunately, in the next 50 years or so, because the combination of sea level rise and all that. And then Montauk, there's a little elevated area of Montauk to around the lighthouse that'll probably be okay. And then the North Fork too. So the North Fork, much of the North Fork is low-lying and is probably going to see flooding too, due to climate change. All right, and you have also low-lying areas around Riverhead too. So the flooding from the tropical events is going to affect these areas. So again, these areas are going to have flooding. It's going to be a big impact for them, all right, and that is obviously the most damaging and devastating impact. Also, there are parts of the North Shore that are low-lying, such as Bayville. So these areas here could see some problems, all right. Bayville is low-lying. Port Jefferson, the village of Port Jefferson, is low-lying, but the North Shore has big bluffs, all right. The thing about Long Island, when we look at the structure of Long Island, is that Long Island obviously was created by glaciers, and we know that the hills in the middle of the island, which we'll draw in that maroon color, right? In the middle and the North Shore, there is a moraine. So you have this. You always notice there's always a lot of big hills just north of the LIE usually. All right, and this is the moraine. This was created when we had the last ice age. Right, and this moraine stretches out along the North Shore and then the middle of the island. Right, this is the highest points. These are the highest points on Long Island. All right, these areas here that I'm highlighting are above, generally above 150 feet above sea level. So these areas here are above 150 feet at least. All right, and they will be safe from flooding. All right, these areas will be safe from flooding. So again, the middle of the island again is the safest area to be in climate change, despite the fact that Wall Street wants you to think that the South Shore is going to be the best because their client lives there and they want to set up their enclave, but they're not using their brains. Right, the North Shore is hilly as well. We know that much of the North Shore is above 150 feet of elevation too. But the issue with the North Shore is that there is not the infrastructure to carry people in and out of the area. All the roads, all the expressways, and the main line of the railroad are in the middle of the island. So again, that makes the middle of the island the best place. So if we draw this blue line here, you'll see this is where the core infrastructure of the island lies, in the middle of the island. All right, the most important parts of the infrastructure of Long Island, the expressways, the Long Island Railroad main line, and also many of the high voltage transmission lines. These are transmission lines that are of at least 138 kV. All right, and this is where the backbone of Long Island is. So again, with these big tropical systems coming in, it's going to impact the South Shore the most. And like I said, we're going to have, because of the warmer than normal water temperatures, we're going to have more and more tropical storms coming up the East Coast, along with all the humidity. All right, but this is just one threat. Also, they bring wind, and the wind is going to affect everybody. And unfortunately, PSEG Long Island has had a backwards way of thinking when it comes to this, by putting most of the new power lines along the South Shore instead of the middle of the island and the North Shore, which is ridiculous. And that is what we're going to talk about in the next part of this video, is the wind. And the wind is going to damage everybody. But the most vulnerable areas for wind, which I'm going to put in, let's see, I guess I could put it in this pink color here, is going to be where there are a lot of old trees. And for wind, it's the North Shore. The North Shore is going to face the most damage from the wind because they have a lot of old trees there that are not resilient to high winds. We're talking about white pines, we're talking about old maples, we're talking about a lot of old hardwood trees that are going to fall in this area. All right. The areas that are least susceptible to wind are, well, the pine barrens. Why the pine barrens? Because in the pine barrens, which again lies mainly in the middle of the island, this really sloppy drawing here, but the pine barrens have pitch pines, which are strong trees that can take a lot of high winds. So as far as down trees and power lines go, the least impact is going to be in this part of Suffolk County right here. It was during Sandy, and it will be again when we have the next hurricane, tropical storm, high wind events that we're going to see. All right. Worst of it is going to be in the North Shore and Nassau County too, because there are a lot of old trees here as well that will fall down. They can't deal with the high winds. The pitch pines can deal with the high winds, but they have their own threats when it comes to the southern pine beetles, which are happening more and more due to climate change because the winters aren't cold enough. But anyway, let's talk about PSEG Long Island and their failure to properly upgrade the power lines where it's most important. So we are on PSEG Long Island's webpage, and their list of circuit improvement projects that they are talking about now. So this is the circuit improvement program, and again, we are going to look at first the Fema improvement projects. All right, and they have a list of all the projects that they have done and that they are in the process of doing, and we're going to actually go and look at some of these projects and see. We're not going to look at every single one, but we're going to look at certain towns. So, all right, so I've kind of compiled everything here, and what you see in the dark blue are the completed jobs that they've done, and in the light blue are the ones that they're working on, according to their website. You'll notice that there is a lot in the town of Hempstead. But there's also a lot in the town of North Hempstead and the town of Oyster Bay, but it's hard to say because this is by the township level, and I'll have to go through each and every circuit that they're doing and show you what exactly if there is any favoritism going on in regards to that. But from what I see with my own eyes, I believe that there is favoritism going on. But this is what I've compiled. So in the town of North Hempstead, they've only completed 2 projects, believe it or not, as far as the upgrading power lines. They're working on 20 in the town of North Hempstead. And in Glen Cove, because this is by the town, they're working on 7. So if you do include that, because Glen Cove is part of the town of Oyster Bay, they've completed 7 in Glen Cove, and so they've completed 32 in the town of Oyster Bay. And working on 11, but the town of Oyster Bay is also the South Shore. In the town of Hempstead, they've completed 18, so they've completed a lot more in the town of Hempstead, but they have 38 more projects to go, so yeah, it seems like there's some kind of favoritism going on there, perhaps. Or, like I said, we have to actually work on an actual map here. I can't come to a conclusion yet using this information. 15 projects have been completed in the town of Babylon, with 3 that they're working on. Town of Huntington has 13 completed and 15 on the way. The town of Smithtown has 5 on the way. They haven't completed anything in the town of Smithtown yet. 31 in the town of Islip have been completed. 45 in the town of Brookhaven. And it seems like they show a preference towards Suffolk County. So all these in Suffolk have been completed. 4 in Riverhead, 13 in the town of Southampton, 10 in Southold, 3 Shelter Island, and 7 in the town of East Hampton, which includes Montauk. So this is an overlook. But we're going to actually look now and go to Google and look actually at the power lines in these areas. And you'll see if there's any favoritism going on. I believe that there is. And these are the areas that are going to be vulnerable toward damage due to the wind in the tropical systems and storms that we're going to have. But before we head on over to Google, actually, there are transmission projects also. Those projects that we were talking about were distribution line. Those are the smaller poles. But these are the larger poles in the town of that you see along the Long Island Railroad tracks. All right, so we're looking at most of these projects here, and most of these projects don't appear to be in the middle of the island. So Arvern, that's South Shore, it's Rockaway. I'm not sure where Cedar Lane is. Let's take a look at that and see what Cedar Lane is. So this was completed, Cedar Lane and Prospect Avenue, Park Street. Doesn't say what town this is in. Doesn't say what town this is in. I don't know where this is. Cedar Lane. I don't know. And Prospect Avenue. I don't know where that is. I don't know where that is. They're not saying. Deer Park Substation. That's in the middle of the island. Okay, so they are working on that, upgrading power lines there. East Islip and Great River reinforcement. We're going to go over what they were doing there. These are some of the power lines along the Long Island Railroad tracks that was upgraded. All right, Floral Park looks like that's in the middle of the island, so it looks like they did that. Orchard Substation in Glen Cove. They did that. Hempstead Substation, all right, they're working on that. Island Park, that's the South Shore. I don't know where Kings Highway is. So it's saying where Kings Highway is. I don't know where that is. Rab Road Drive. I think that's Hauppauge. I think. Lindbergh. All right, so this is around, I'm guessing, Lindbergh Boulevard? Charles Lindbergh Boulevard, a new substation. All right, so that's the middle of the island. All right, that's good. Montauk. All right, Long Island Railroad. This is what I'm really interested in. Long Island Railroad replacing hauls, transmission poles. All right. So they're doing some work on the Why does the Babylon branch need new poles? Central branch, yeah, could need new poles. Far Rockaway might need new poles. Main line definitely needs new poles. Montauk branch, they're doing Oyster Bay branch and Port Jeff. So they're doing all of these. Construction is expected to begin in April 2018. They're also working on Mineola Metro. So the Mineola is supposedly getting new power lines. So again, it does seem like they're working on all of the areas of the island. Syosset and Woodbury underground reinforcement project. So there's an underground route there that is Wellwood Avenue. So again, from the looks of it, it looks like they're working everywhere. But let's go to Google Earth and see where things have really improved and where they haven't. Alright, so we're on the Google Maps now, and we're going to look and take a look at the power lines. Now, of course, I'll start in the middle of the island, because that's what I know best. And I'll tell you that they have put new poles along Roslyn Road and Jericho Turnpike in Mineola. Alright, those are the only areas they've done so far, I can tell you that off the bat. I know there are new poles of Roslyn Road going through East Williston, but no, none of the poles along Hillside or Jericho have been replaced, especially in the western area. And again, we can look at these distribution poles and show you how bad they look, particularly along this spot here at Herrick's Road. We could take a look at some of these distribution poles. They look pretty bad, especially this one right here, which is leaning. Look at those old transformers on there. This hasn't been replaced yet. It's a very, important area, but yet not a priority. This pole is leaning. This street view was taken in October 2018. All right, so showing you some of the crappy power infrastructure we have in our area, because I think it looks pretty bad, and I'm worried it's going to cause a problem when the next storm hits. And of course, power outages are going to be the biggest impact of climate change. We're going to have more power outages because the areas, the South Shore is going to have the water, but we're going to be dealing with power outages, and yet the water. Here's the thing: once you have flooding, you can't run electricity anyway. So why are they spending so much time on upgrading the South Shore whenever there's a hurricane in these flood zones, there's going to be water, and people aren't going to be able to have power and water, because electricity and water don't mix. So, right now we're in the middle of the island. I'll explain it to you. So again, you can look at some of these old power lines here that we have here. All right, and these are the distribution lines that carry the power into the neighborhoods. All right, so we have a lot of old power lines in Mineola, and the same thing goes for Westbury. Let's go and look at the bridge over Ellison Avenue right here, because I think Street View should have we're not at the bridge. All right, but here's Ellison Avenue, and you can see these old power lines. Again, old distribution lines here. This was taken in September 2012, however. So it is an old street view, which here's the more current one with some newer poles that were replaced as part of the bridge. They replaced these 3 poles here. These are distribution poles. But my concern more lies with these transmission lines. This transmission line you see here is an old, very old power line circuit. 67 kilovolt circuit that feeds substations in Hicksville. It actually is a link between Hicksville, Westbury, and Mineola. All right, and these power lines need to be upgraded. Again, this is the main line right here, Long Island Railroad main line. And these power lines have been responsible for a number of suspensions on the main line due to the wires coming off these old style power lines, which these probably date back to the 50s. And if you look closely at the pole, you can see it's rotted, and this is a very old pole. You can tell by looking at it. And these still haven't been replaced yet. All right, most of them still have not been replaced. And next tropical system or hurricane hits, this stuff's going to come down, and it's going to cause not only is it going to cause a service suspension on the main line, or it could be any windstorm for them, any severe weather event, but you're also going to have a lot of people impacted by power outages. If this line goes down, this line supplies the power for the Long Island Railroad main line as well as many communities along it. And PSEG Long Island has still not upgraded these things. And I think it should be a priority to them to upgrade this, but it's not. So these are some of the what some of the poles look like. We can look at them from Westbury as well, and this is going to be an issue when the next tropical system comes. This is going to be an area that's going to be impacted by power outages when the next tropical storm hits. So again, old power lines, they replace them one at a time. Here's a new one that they put in. All right, all of these. This is a much more resilient design. All right, with these insulators, thicker pole. This won't come down in a storm. But this old stuff will. You have this design here. First of all, is terrible. I'm gonna explain to you why in a minute. Let's go to the School Street crossing and look at some more of these old poles. Actually, you know what? We can see some more of them from this Grand Avenue crossing over here. All right. All right. The issue with these old poles is these are suspension insulators. So, and first of all, these poles, look at how thin they are. These will snap in high winds. This is a power outage in Long Island Railroad suspension waiting to happen, yet PSEG Long Island has dragged its feet on replacing these poles. This line in here, these are suspension insulators, and this design here is very prone to arcing. When I lived in Westbury, these things would arc during every severe windstorm. They arc a lot. And again, very bad. This is an outage and Long Island Railroad suspension waiting to happen here from these poles, and yet PSEG Long Island has still not replaced these things. All right, and it's ridiculous. Should have been replaced. They should have been replaced, but they haven't. So this is the vulnerable circuit 1 here that we're talking about. This circuit here runs between Mineola here and Hicksville, which is over here. And it still has not been upgraded yet. All right, and then we have another circuit that runs out from Hicksville that runs out to Syosset along the Long Island Railroad tracks as well that we've spoken about, and it's this circuit right here that you're going to look at in a minute under these tracks here. And this was taken very recently, this street view as well, in the fall of 2018. Look at this pole. So it's again the same design. This thing is ready to fall over, not onto the tracks. It looks like it's ready to fall over, maybe onto this building here. Again, this is a 67 kilovolt circuit here, hanging at a very precarious angle. Have notified the railroad about it. Have notified PSEG about it. Still not replaced. So again, another example of neglect and favoritism going on from PSEG Long Island. And this is what I mean. You see the South Shore, I'll show you. There are no poles that look like that on the South Shore. So let's go and look at this bridge here in the Northern State. You can actually see the main line here. So these poles here look okay. These look like they're metal, so these are okay. But this is a 67 kilovolt. This is a 138 kilovolt on the left side here. So this looks okay because, again, these have the steel tubular poles here, which are very strong. And that's what's used along the Babylon branch a lot of. So let's go to Robbins Lane over here. This will be the next. Again, this is the Huntington branch we are on now. And look at these poles. So this is looking south. Let's take a look north. You'll notice two old distribution poles as well. These haven't been replaced yet. What about looking north from this line? Right. Looks like some of these have been replaced. So, but they do it piecemeal. Again, they do it piecemeal. It looks bad at Syosset too. When Kevin actually wound up doing his station tour there, he noted that these poles looked kind of unstable, and they were worrying him. So, and for good reason. So let's take a look at them right now. This is the Syosset train station, and these are the poles. Again, same old 67 kV circuit that still hasn't been upgraded by PSEG Long Island. What are they waiting for? I don't know what they're waiting for. It's a good question. But these poles are just waiting to fail. They're old, they're rotten, they're ready to snap. This is a service disruption and major power outage waiting to happen that PSEG Long Island still has not fixed. Now we are entering hurricane season. So you can see lots of neglect along the tracks here, along the main line. And I think that the Port Washington line also has a lot of old stuff in there too. We're going to actually look and see if any of those power lines have been upgraded. Let's take a look at Plandome, because there have been some issues on the Port Washington branch due to power lines and Plandome. So let's take a look. Oh, they have some new ones. Looks like they got new ones. Hold on. I think they have newer ones here. Let's see. These don't look that new. They don't look that new to me. Nope. No, they do not. This one does, but again, it's hit or miss. It's really hit or miss. It really is hit or miss. But anyway, let's look at some of the key transmission lines, and I'm just looking at transmission lines right now in this part of the video because that's what's going to impact the most customers, our transmission lines. So let's head further east along the middle of the island. First of all, we have Hicksville. And again, a major area, and these are distribution lines, but I want to show you, you've seen that they're old and they need to be replaced. Major commercial area, and we have old power lines here. No new power lines for this area. Not a priority for PSEG Long Island, apparently. Despite the fact it's a major commercial area, it's not a priority. And we can actually go around Roosevelt Field and this area too. We have some old power lines too that are along Zeckendorf Boulevard, which are over here. So have some old power lines here too. Then some of these are leaning pretty bad too. Last time I was over here, they were leaning pretty bad. There's a new one, but yep, here you go. Here's a couple that are leaning. So oh yeah, this is where they're leaning, right over here. So if we go up the road here, you'll see this is again an area that's going to be impacted when the next storm hits. We have the gallery at Westbury Plaza, but apparently this is not a priority for PSEG. Look at that. Look at how that pole is leaning like that. These poles are leaning terribly. Again, not a priority for PSEG Long Island at all whatsoever to fix that. You see there's a lot of neglect by PSEG Long Island in the middle of the island. I've gone over several areas now. So next we will go into Suffolk County and look at this area. So we will go and look at Deer Park, which is another area that's being neglected. So let's go into Deer Park and see what's going on. All right. So where we load by these poles. Oh, look at this one. Oh my gosh. All right. We are looking for this road here. So we're looking for the Deer Park train station, the area around the Deer Park train station. All right. That's what we're looking for. So let's get over there to Pioneer Drive. Google Earth doesn't want to. This is an old view, actually. This is from October. Let me get over there. Computer is acting up again. Let's get over to Pioneer Drive and Grant Avenue, which should be very close to the Deer Park train station. Oh my gosh! Look at this. There's people passed out. Look at this on the sidewalk. This is the way Deer Park is treated. You see what I mean? All right. We're talking about her. It was tropical. These are old poles too. All right. These poles right here. They're old. Here's the tracks. Here's the Ronkonkoma line. And we're going to go and head this way. We're going to head east and show you there is a pole that is leaning. And we're going to take you to it right now. So again, this is an important power line. It might supply power to the Ronkonkoma line if it goes down. This is another old power line that's leaning. This one I have not reported to PSEG Long Island yet, but I will. This one right here. So this is Street View from July 2018. Alright, and you can see that power line is leaning very badly. And there's another one actually. So again, this looks like a 67 kilovolt power line. So if it goes down, it's going to cause a big power outage, obviously. But again, not a priority for PSEG Long Island because it's the middle of the island and a certain demographic does not live here. So therefore, they're not taken care of. So we have another one that's actually crooked a little further down too. I'll show it to you as well. So again, I'm very concerned about the impact of increased tropical activity and extended and frequent power outages as we have more storms due to climate change and the neglect here. So here you go. I'll show it to you here. Look at that pole. Look at that one. Look at that one's leaning terribly. Not fixed. Hasn't been fixed by PSEG Long Island yet. So let's get a little closer to it. I think there's another one leaning too. There's a whole bunch leaning. They haven't fixed yet. Alright, looks like that one is new. So they replaced that one. Sorry, my computer is being slow here. There's another one down here. Look at this. This one's leaning too. Oh my gosh, look at that. So this is something I'm going to be talking about more of, is the neglect of the power lines by PSEG Long Island. Look at this one. Oh my gosh. That is really bad. That is simply not acceptable. Again, this goes down. It could impact service on the Ronkonkoma line. Could cause a blackout in this area. You have Tanger outlets at the Arches. But apparently that's not important to PSEG Long Island. Nope. Yeah. Nope. So let's take a look and see how the privileged folks do in Babylon, and take a look and see how their power lines look. I'm sure they don't look like that at all. Let's go to Little East Neck Road right here, because there is a 67 kilovolt power line right along the tracks here, and take a look at how their power line looks. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. It's all new. Yep. All new power lines. Yep. And they have the steel poles along the Babylon line. Here, look at that. Yep. All new power lines. Don't see any crooked power lines here. Nope. All new power lines. Look at that. Let's go a little further west here. Let's go over here. Most of these street views are current too, so you can see all new power lines. Look at that. Yep. Yep, there you go. All new. Nothing crooked, nothing leaning there. Nope. Only the best, right? Because a certain demographic lives here. You betcha. Yep. They don't have to deal with any crooked power lines. Nope. Nope, no crooked poles here. Nope, everything is straight. Nope, no problems here. Oh, I see a new pole there. Yep. We expect it's the South Shore. They don't have to deal with that kind of stuff. Let's head a little further west now. Let's head toward Lindenhurst. They got all new poles over here, but it might not show up in the street. Yep, here they are. All new poles. See, they got all new poles here. It's Lindenhurst. Yep, they got metal power lines there along the Babylon branch, so don't have to worry. See, why don't we have that? Why doesn't the main line have this? This is what the main line should have. No, we don't get that. Makes a whole lot of sense, right? And this area is going to be underwater. Makes a whole lot of sense to give them new power lines. Right, even though the power will have to be shut off anyway when this goes underwater when the next tropical storm hits. Here you go, new power lines. Sunrise Highway, Massapequa. Yep, this whole area will be underwater when the next hurricane hits, but they get new power lines, of course. Get that nice new straight power lines. PSEG Long Island. And even though some of these are wood along the tracks here, they're all straight. Nope, no crooked ones here. Nope, because it's the South Shore. Alright, let's head further west along the South Shore, shall we? Let's take a look at Newbridge Road in Belmore. There's a substation right here. Oh, mostly new power lines. Yep. Look at how straight those power lines are. Yep. Straight. I don't see any crooked poles at all. None. Let's go along here. All right, this is October 2017. Yep, new poles. They're setting them up. See, look. There they are. They're getting new poles. This was in October 2017. Merrick, or this is still Belmore. And this is another power line here. An older power line, but it's taken care of. It's straight. I don't see any crooked poles. Nope. Nope. Only the best. Only the best for the South Shore. Once again. Let's go a little further west where we could see some more power lines. Some more power lines. Let's take a look at Lynbrook. There's some power lines here. So some power lines here. Take a look at how well these power lines are taken care of. Merrick Road and Lynbrook. Yep, these are all straight. Yep, mostly new poles. Yep, these aren't new, but look at that. They have metal. They have metal poles. Look at how straight those wires are. Of course, so even though this area might be underwater, the power line will still be, their power won't go out. Even though they won't be able to use it because everything is flooded. Yeah, they'll have good power. Sure. Sure. All right, that's enough of the South Shore of Nassau and Western Suffolk. Let's head further east. Circuit here has been replaced. Even though this area will be flooded, you know, they got to have new poles because they're important. Meanwhile, I really want to see if we can find where they put those new poles in, because I know they put them in. Find them somewhere on the street view to show you. Let's try Atlantic Avenue. There's a Long Island Railroad truck working right there. Yep, they're new poles. See, those are new poles they put in. So they're doing this project here. They're replacing all these old poles with the new poles. You know, just, yeah, here you go. And concrete ties too, just because. But, yep, new poles. Even though this area will be flooded, they're getting new poles. Sure. Meanwhile, let's go and take a look at Ronkonkoma and see if they're replacing any of the poles around the Ronkonkoma substation, which is not too far away from the Ronkonkoma train station. So it's on Hawkins Avenue. It's somewhat up over here. Let's take a look and see if they've replaced anything here. Shall we? And this street view is from, I don't know when. Alright, I do see new distribution lines. That's good. I see a couple of new distribution lines. Looks like they are replacing the distribution lines. Alright, this is as of July 2018. So they are replacing the distribution lines. That's good. But what about the transmission lines? Let's go down Church Road, which is right here. Let's see if they've replaced these. Oh, they have not. Nope. Still using old distribution lines. Look at that. Wow. I mean, these are old transmission lines. This is another circuit that needs to be replaced, but have they replaced it? No. No, they haven't. And this also is one of the feeders to the Ronkonkoma line. So this serves the Ronkonkoma substation, which links the Ronkonkoma line's power. But apparently, no, these aren't getting replaced. Sorry, not replacing them. Nope, nope. So it's hard to say I can't say for sure that there is favoritism, but it sure appears that there is favoritism going on. And it makes no sense to put all these upgrades on the South Shore when it's an area that's going to be flooded. And in the middle of the island, it's a lot of old infrastructure that's not being replaced and not being updated. And this is a big problem. And, it's not just the railroad. The railroad's actually doing a better job now that Elisa Peak is out of the picture. They're going to be putting concrete ties along the Ronkonkoma line. That's great. But you have these old power lines that aren't being upgraded by PSEG Long Island. And this is a big problem. A big area. Like I said, why is the South Shore getting all this? Another area they put metal poles. And believe it or not, even the Long Beach branch has metal poles. Take a look at this. And I'm going to wrap up looking at power lines. Yep. This is one of the feeders to Long Beach. Metal. Metal. This area is going to be underwater, but whatever. They still get metal. Yep. But does the main line get metal? No, we don't get metal. No. So, again, let's talk about climate change and where PSEG is doing their work. All right. So, we know that during Hurricane Sandy, This whole area flooded. Alright, I'm drawing where they were flooded. Just general area where there was flooding from Hurricane Sandy. Anything south of this light blue line here pretty much got flooded. Alright? I'm only going to draw out to here. But anything south of this, and Sandy was barely a Category 1. Barely a Cat 1. Alright? A Cat 1. But it took a track. We had the full moon, and it took a track that pretty much inundated this entire area with storm surge that you see. But it was barely a Category 1, and the track obviously went to the west, and you know, we suffered because of that. But that could happen again with the jet stream. All right, remember, barely a Cat 1. Now, with warmer ocean temperatures being able to support stronger storms, as much as a Cat 3 or Cat 4, we know that if we have a Cat 3 or 4 hurricane, that the water, the flooding, is going to impact all of these areas here. All right? This area where anything south of that blue line that I'm drawing will be underwater. All right? Yet, PSEG feels the need to put lots of new power lines in this area, despite the fact this area is going to be underwater. Even if you elevate the substations above the flooding, even if you do all that, the homes and the properties are still going to be underwater, and it won't be safe for them to get electricity. But yet they continue to upgrade a lot of power lines in this area because a certain demographic happens to live in this area. All right? Yet the middle of the island, we've seen bad power lines. We've seen bad power lines in Westbury. We've seen them in Hicksville. We've seen them in Syosset. We've seen them in Deer Park. We've seen them in Ronkonkoma. All right? These are all areas that will be safe from flooding. But yet, they don't get upgraded. We're stuck with these old power lines that look like this crap. All right? That's what we're stuck with. All right? They haven't upgraded yet. All right? And we know, even though the South Shore is going to suffer from water, we are going to suffer from wind. We're going to be dealing with wind. All right? And wind will topple all these old power lines and cause major power outages in the middle of the island, which is the safest place to be in a hurricane. And we're going to be seeing more hurricanes. So you may ask yourself, why is PSEG doing this? Why are they wasting money on the South Shore? Because a certain demographic lives there. All right? That's why. All right? Why did they get metal poles? Why isn't the main line getting metal poles? Why aren't we getting metal? If anyone deserves metal poles, it's the main line. But we're not getting it. No, the South Shore gets it, despite the fact they're going to be flooded. So we're going to have wind, we're going to have down trees, and we're going to have lots of power outages. I remember after Sandy, how bad it was. And after Sandy, LIPA was showing favoritism too. All right, because after Sandy, pretty much this whole area had this whole area had no power, and we had no power for 10 days in much of this area. That includes the area around Roosevelt Field. Lots of businesses were out of power. 10 freaking days. All right? The North Shore, they were out of power for 2 weeks. All right? 2 weeks they were out of power. All right? Suffolk did a little better. Again, the Pine Barrens, they got their power back after a couple of days. So maybe 2 to 3 days. Much of the Pine Barrens had their power back, and some didn't even lose it at all. So they did fare the best. The South Shore had power until PSEG turned it off when the water came in. All right, but much of their power lines did not go down. I mean, there were countless videos of Long Beach underwater with the lights still on. It didn't go out until the floodwaters hit the substation over here, which was right over here, and finally knocked out the power, knocked out the feeder powers that go into Long Beach and caused the power to finally go out. But I know people in Belmore who never lost power at all. They never lost power at all over here in Belmore. Again, it was turned off because of the water. But they get new power lines. They get their power lines maintained. We have crooked old power lines that are going to fail in the next storm. And we're going to see more storms because of climate change. So the South Shore is going to be flooded. We're going to be dealing with wind damage in the rest of the island. The North Shore is going to be screwed with all those old trees coming down, all these storms. In the middle of the island will be the safest place because we don't have as many old trees. There are more pine barrens here, and we are the safest area. This here is the safest area to be in the new climate. And this should be priority number one for PSEG, the Long Island Railroad, and everything else. Because this is going to be the safest place. You put all your businesses here. You put all your new developments here. You put all your investments here. Not here. Not the South Shore. But yet, that's where it's going. Because a certain demographic lives there. It's stupid. And in the new climate, it's going to be even more stupid. Let's just go back to that day Sandy hit. This is October 27th. Here is Sandy. Alright? There's Hurricane Sandy. It was a hurricane. Now imagine when the waters are warmer, how much stronger this is going to be. And we're going to see more of this kind of thing because the pattern that brought Sandy here, the jet stream being wavy, this pattern is getting more and more common. And now, luckily, it hit in October. Now, what happens when we have a Cat 3, a Cat 4 slam our area, and it's summer, and after it leaves, it's stiflingly humid. There's no power. There's no air conditioning. Imagine what it's going to be. And yet, the power company wants to put all this investment onto the South Shore, which is going to flood, and the middle of the island is being neglected. The North Shore is being neglected. We're not getting enough new poles. We're not getting our high tension power lines replaced. Hurricane season is just literally days away. It's going to start soon, and it could be a bad one. And there's no sense of urgency by PSEG Long Island to replace the poles in the middle of the island, particularly those high tension poles. And I'm very concerned about this. I'm very concerned what is going to happen. I'll tell you this, and I said it before, if a Cat 3 or Cat 4 comes here, especially if a Cat 4 comes here, I am not sticking around, especially if it's going to be hot and humid, because I can't survive. I will die. I will die. I can't deal with it. So think about this, folks, as we deal with the new climate and the vulnerabilities that Long Island faces. And if this kind of favoritism continues, Long Island will not be habitable for people to live on anymore. And that's going to be a shame. Between the humidity, between the countless, we can do it. We can get through this if we. And I know talking about all the things we need to do to cool the planet down and cutting carbon emissions, but speaking strictly of infrastructure on Long Island, we need to make the middle of the island. We can do it. We can build up our infrastructure. We can get metal poles. We can fix the power lines. We can put the investment in the middle, and we can get through this. But if this favoritism keeps happening, we're not going to get through this. So I end the video here, and this is the Long Island Railroad's expansion project on the main line, which is very important. And like I said, I credit the governor for getting this going, because this is an investment in the middle of the island that's needed. Especially, we've got to harden our infrastructure, and I actually think the railroad is actually trying a lot harder than PSEG Long Island at this point. So even though I focused a lot on electricity on this in this video, I'll just go over these final points here before I wrap up this video. So we need to reinforce the areas in the core areas of Long Island. These are the most important areas that are going to be safe from storm surge, all right, in the middle of the island. And we need to focus on planting trees that are more tolerant towards storms, such as pitch pines. And maybe even, well, as it gets warmer, we may even be able to plant palm trees here. Those are pretty strong and can withstand hurricanes, too. And we need to invest in the core areas of Long Island, and like Hicksville, for instance. Hicksville doesn't have to be full of abandoned buildings. All these new businesses that keep opening on the South Shore, they're going to flood, should be opening in Hicksville, all right? And in the flood zones, all right? I'm not saying abandon the South Shore, but the buildings are going to have to be elevated as the sea level rises, so they don't get flooded. And we need to work on restoring wetlands. Maybe some areas of the South Shore that are currently have houses on them should be returned back to nature. Wetlands help absorb floodwaters and could help mitigate the effects of rising seas and more storm surges due to increased tropical storm and hurricane activity as we deal with this changing climate. So those are just some of the points. I know it looks kind of crappy on the screen. I do apologize. I did put this video together very quickly, but again, we are in a climate emergency. We need to start talking about climate change. We need PSEG Long Island to get their act together with get themselves moving on replacing these poles, especially these high tension poles along the Long Island Railroad main line, because we are just a few days away from the start of hurricane season and need to be getting to it and replacing these poles. There's no reason why the middle of the island should be neglected the way it is when it's the safest spot to be on Long Island as the climate changes and we're going to see more hurricanes and climate-related natural disasters. Anyway, that wraps up this update on climate change and this video on climate change. And thank you for watching.